Hi, I'm Alexis, just an ordinary cook. It's towards the end of summer, and you know what that means. It's time for the Z word. No, not zombies, zucchinis. And if your garden is like mine, it's just bursting with zucchinis. So let's see what we could do with some of them. One fun thing about zucchinis is one time you look at them, they're this big. The next time you look at them, they're this big. They're huge. What do we do with the big ones? Well, let's take them in the house and I'll show you. So now we have our nice big zucchinis. You're probably used to the ones you buy in the grocery store that are substantially smaller than this and that you slice and saute or maybe barbecue. Today we're going to bake zucchini in various ways. And the first way we're going to do it is chocolate chip zucchini bread. It's really good. But when you bake, you don't want the peels. So we're going to peel the zucchinis first. They're very easy to peel. You just take a regular old peeler and run down the side of your zucchini, and it peels really fast. Afterwards, we're going to put it in a food processor, and then we're going to turn it into shreds. Not sure what you would do with the zucchini peel, so we're just going to put them in the compost. Little slippery devils. Oops. So now that we've got our zucchinis peeled, we wanted to cut off the ends, and then we're going to put them in the food processor. We've got our food processor, and I've got the food processor with the shredder attachment. This means that as the zucchini goes through, you're going to get little fine shreds that fall into the bottom. Now, how are we going to do this? I cut them in half, and then I cut them in quarters, just so that they can get into the little hopper there. Now, before I said that these will have large seeds, and you can see the seeds right in the middle. So what I'm going to do is cut those seeds out, and you can see them in even larger that way. So we're going to cut those out. I could leave a few seeds, but not the big ones. So we're going to cut the middles. Yes, you'd have less volume of zucchinis, but we've got more zucchinis, so maybe it doesn't matter. Okay, so, and again, they're kind of slippery, so be careful. You don't want to cut yourself. Now, you could also use some kind of a scraping tool if you wanted and get them out that way. It's left up to you and how many widgets you have in your kitchen. Okay, so we're down to our last zucchini. I've done 3 large zucchinis because we're going to do 3 different dishes. But you can also take the shredded zucchini, put it in a baggie, and freeze it. And that way, later on in the winter, you can pull it out and make more zucchini bread. Okay, so we're going to take one and another, and we sort of pack them in there, and then just lightly pulse, or not. You're probably going to end up with a few big chunks on the top, which we're going to make into compost. And so what we have now is some nice shredded zucchini. And I'm just going to keep doing this until we get them all shredded. It's also kind of a challenge to get these pieces to go into your processor and fit snugly. If they aren't snug, then you're going to end up having them turn sideways, and then they're not going to get shredded. Now, I'm using my hand to start with because I'm way far away from the blades, but this little tool here helps get it all the way down. Okay, so now we have a lot of shredded zucchini. One thing about zucchinis is they do hold a lot of water. And so what you're going to do is we're going to squeeze the water out as much as possible. Now that I've cleaned up a little bit, we are left with our shredded zucchini. And like I said, we need to get the water out. You can do this several ways. You can take a towel, a paper towel, or use your hands. And as you can see, when you squeeze, there's quite a bit of liquid that comes out. So what we're going to do is in batches, I'm going to take my hands and kind of squeeze as much of the liquid out of the zucchini as I can. And then we'll just keep doing that. And then at the end, I'm going to press down and try to squeeze a little bit more. Another way to do this is to get a colander and a pan, and you can put your zucchini in the colander and push on it. Try to get as much liquid out as possible. You can use your hand, you can use the back of a glass or a jar or whatever works. So as you can see, I'm getting lots of zucchini liquid out of the zucchinis. The reason we want to do this is that way when you make your baking, it's not soupy or too wet or just icky. So now that we've squeezed as much liquid out of our zucchini as we can, we're going to go on to making our chocolate chip zucchini bread. You know, all those mornings and evenings I watered my garden, I guess that's part of it. The first thing that we're going to need is 1.5 cups of sugar, 3 eggs, and a cup of oil. My neighbor has chickens, and so I get these wonderful eggs fresh out of the chicken. So we're going to put the eggs in the bowl and whip them up. I like to crack the egg on a hard surface. That way, if it cracks on the outside of the bowl and goes onto the floor, we don't want that. This way it works inside the bowl. Okay, then we're going to add 1.5 cups of sugar. Mix that up a little bit. And 1 cup of oil. I use canola oil. You could use regular vegetable oil. So we're going to mix all of this together. Gets a little kind of thick, which is what we want. And then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to put it into the zucchini. So just put it all in. Get it all out of the first bowl. Put it into the second bowl. I'm going to switch from the whip to a spoon and just kind of mix everything together, because we are going to mix it better a little bit later, but just so you can see that it's pretty well mixed. And one last thing that I add is 3 tablespoons of vanilla. Okay, so now we're going to do our dry ingredients. And we're going to add 2.5 cups of flour, a teaspoon of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder, a teaspoon of baking soda, 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, 1 teaspoon of nutmeg, and we're going to mix that up a little bit. You could sift it all together if you like. I like to use a wire whisk. It kind of is more fun to watch. This is a chocolate chip recipe, but I'm also going to add some cocoa powder. The recipe calls for 2 tablespoons of cocoa powder. I like a lot of chocolate. I'm using 4. So now we're going to add the wet ingredients into the dry ingredients. So it's a little soupy, but all of that flour should soak it up and make a nice batter. We're just going to mix it slowly because, once again, this is a little sloppy. You've got a lot of moisture and a lot of wonderful zucchini in there. So we're just mix it up slowly until it's a nice consistency. Don't forget to scrape your sides. That's where the flour likes to lurk. This way you get it all in there. Now, for your taste, if you think it's too soupy, you can always add more flour. And again, it's your choice how thick you want this batter to be. We're going to put this in loaf pans, and we're also going to put it in a cupcake pan. These make really good cupcakes. You don't need to ice them. They're very moist. They can also be frozen. And you know, I was so excited to get this mixed up, I forgot the secret ingredient, chocolate chips. So now we're going to grease and flour our loaf pan. I have a glass one. I've heated the oven to 375. The way to oil these or grease them, you can either spray with a spray, but I liked, as you can see, to use my hands. So I have some butter here, and we're going to get a little messy. We're going to put the butter on the bottom of the pan, around the sides, all the way up, just in case it rises too high. So we get this all greased. You can see how it's done. Then I'm going to wash my hands just to get the butter off. And then we're going to flour the pan. And this is kind of fun. We take the flour, put it in the bottom, not a whole lot of flour as you can see, and then we start moving the flour around. And we want to get it down to the bottom of the pan, as you can see, and we kind of tap it and let it work its way around the edge of the pan. It's kind of fun. Of course, if you are a little too rambunctious, you'll end up with flour on the counter, but hey, we already had zucchini on the counter, so who cares? So now this is floured. Then we take our batter and we spoon it in or pour it in, whichever you want. I like to just pour it up halfway. Again, we're not sure how much it's going to rise, but we hope that it rises all the way to the top. Then what we're going to do is to make some cupcakes. I have a regular old cupcake pan and some cupcake liners. I like to use the liners just because they're easier to get out of the pan, for those of you who've ever tried this, and also that it's cleaner. So now I have the cupcake liners in there. Then I have this wonderful little scooper that I have found through trial and error is just about enough batter for one cupcake. These can go almost to the top. They're not going to rise as much as the actual loaf pan. But we're just going to scoop them in, and then we're going to put everything in the oven at 375. Now, the cupcakes are going to cook for maybe 25 minutes. The loaf pan is going to cook for almost an hour because it's so dense. I can get 2 batches of cupcakes for the same time period as one loaf pan. So we're going to do one batch now, put them all in at the same time, and then halfway through the cooking process for the loaf pan, we'll have the cupcakes be done and then do the cupcakes again. So now we're going to put them in a 375 oven, and then when that's done, we'll do another batch of cupcakes. So now we're going to make some zucchini fritters. The first thing we're going to do are the dry ingredients this time. We're going to add a half a cup of flour, a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda, not baking powder, but baking soda. And then we're going to add some cornmeal, a half a cup. We're going to mix it up with a whisk. Next, I'm going to mix in an egg. It's always a wise idea to crack your egg into a bowl or something before you add it, just in case it's got a blood spot or you've got some of the shell. So we're going to put the egg in there, kind of mix it up, and then we're going to add some zucchini. I'm not sure I'm going to use all of this zucchini, so let's start with half and see what happens. Okay, so now I'm going to switch to a real spoon because the whisk just is too fine in order to get around all the chunks of zucchini. Okay, so we're going to mix this up. And while we're mixing, we're also going to add a half a cup of finely chopped onion and some corn kernels off the corn, or frozen corn, whichever you choose. And that's about a half a cup of corn. And it gets to be kind of, looks like, well, a hot mess. But actually, it's really, really good. So the egg is going to help hold this together with the flour. And then what we're going to do is we're going to fry it on a griddle. You can also fry this in a frying pan if you like, or a flat frying pan. But I like the griddle because I can get a whole lot of them done all at once. I'm going to turn it all the way up to 400 degrees, which is as high as this griddle goes. And then I'm going to spray it with some, in this case, olive oil, but it could also be vegetable oil. Okay, so here comes the messy part. We're going to take our fritter batter and make patties. I like to flour my hands before I do this. Now, that way, hopefully, when I make a patty, it doesn't stick to me, it sticks together. And then we lay them out, kind of give them a little pat onto the griddle. You can also use panko. And panko are Japanese breadcrumbs. It makes things a little crunchier. So you can take maybe a little bit and put it around the outside of your little fritter as you make it. Kind of like making snowballs, only flat. A little bit of flour, a little bit of panko, and we just lay them out on our griddle. Now, you can make these and freeze them. They freeze very well once they're cooked. You can also serve them like you would potato pancakes with some applesauce and sour cream with some hot sauce. These are very versatile. You could put chili peppers in there. You could put garlic, all kinds of interesting other vegetables just to make them taste different. Now you could also have used more olive oil than I'm using. It would give them probably a crispier edge. However, I'm going for the low-cal. If at any time you would like to respray, you can do that. Give it, if they're not cooking as crispy as you would like. So as soon as I flip these guys, I heard the buzzer go off that I think our cupcakes are done. So here we are with our cupcakes. They look nice and done. I have a little tester here. And yes, they've come out clean, except for maybe a little chocolate chip that's still soft from cooking, and I think we are done. So now we're going to take a large zucchini and make, of all things, lasagna. The lasagna noodles will be substituted by slices of this large zucchini. But as before, we have to start out by peeling it. And once we peel it, we're going to pull out our mandolin. And no, not sing you a song, but the slicing mandolin. And we're going to slice this into some fairly small, thin pieces. And then when we make our lasagna, we're going to substitute this for the noodles. We're going to slice the ends off, finish peeling them a little bit. The mandolin is a very dangerous thing if you don't know how to use it. It's very sharp. There are blades right along here. You can crank the wheel here to make the opening wider or smaller. I've pre-cranked it to hopefully make these 1/8 of an inch thick. Now this part of the mandolin is to protect your hands, especially if you're doing like potatoes or cucumbers or something where you're getting close to the blades. Then you use this that has like a little pusher on it. This slides along the mandolin, and then you work your way down until you have almost nothing left. Today we're going to do it a little dangerously, but hopefully it'll work. We're going to start our zucchini on the mandolin, and I'm going to try to make it a little more stable by pushing it away from me. Okay, so we're going to start that way, give it another push, and see what you get. These look kind of like lasagna noodles, wouldn't you think? So we're going to go through this. However, when we get close to the blade, I'm going to do the safe thing and use the pusher. Okay, so we've got a bunch. Now we're running into those seeds again. So I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to do it on the other side. That way we're getting down to the center. Now before I go too far, I'm going to rotate this one more time. Again, we're doing the outer part of the zucchini down to the seeded area. And when you start seeing seeds, that's your clue to flip it over. Okay, so the oven timer has gone off and our loaf pan of chocolate chip zucchini bread is ready. It's nice and brown and very lovely looking. And the nice thing about the chocolate chip zucchini bread is you can loosen it from the pan, and it's already pre-loosened because remember you smeared it with butter and put flour on it. So now you can take it and just turn it out onto a cooling rack, flip it over, and let it cool down. And when it's ready, we'll slice it up and we'll have a yummy and very nutritious dessert. So now it's time for the lasagna. I had lots of basil in my garden. I'm going to make a little pesto to go into our lasagna. And also we're going to use some pre-frozen and chopped leaf spinach. So let's go over to the stove and start our lasagna. Turn our eye to probably 3/4. Put about 2 tablespoons of olive oil in the pan. Let that heat up a little bit. So we have a garlic here, and the best way to cut it is to cut the ends off, then take it and smash it underneath your knife, and that releases the little husks that are around it. And then that way we can cut the garlic in very fine pieces and begin to saute. They're ready to go. I'm going to turn the heat down slightly. Okay, and then I'm going to add about 1/2 cup of onions. And I think my oil is maybe a little bit too hot. So we're going to lift it off the eye and let it cool down a little bit. And then we're going to put a lid on it and let it cook slightly. I have some cut leaf spinach that was frozen. I have drained it. I have pushed it down as much as I can to get most of the water out. And so as we cook our garlic and our onions, we're also going to put in the spinach. So this is starting to get golden brown a little bit. Yeah. So then we'll put our spinach in there. Stir in the spinach. Get that all together. And then after we do this, we're going to start to put together our lasagna. So while we're waiting for our spinach and onion and garlic mixture to cool down, I'm going to make a little bit of pesto. Not the pesto with the pine nuts because, well, I don't have any pine nuts, but I do have plenty of fresh basil. And so what we're going to do is make it up in our little blender here. This is the juice smoothie attachment to my blender. And so I've already started with a little bit of chopped basil and a garlic. I'm going to finish with the rest of my basil. We're going to chop the basil slightly, and then I'm going to take some Parmesan cheese, put that in there, and I don't know, maybe 1/4 cup. I have 1/2 cup here. I need to test it first. Then I'm going to get some olive oil and drizzle some olive oil in there. I don't know, maybe 1/4 cup. We need enough oil so that everything moves well in the blender. So I'll put the lid on, stick it in the blender. I love this little attachment to make smoothies. I think I'm going to add a little bit of lemon juice. And it's blending up very nicely. And maybe a little bit more olive oil. Okay, that's more like it. All right, so now I've got some pesto-y looking pesto for sure. And we're going to take that and put it into our dish here. Now this kind of pesto, I mean, the only thing missing are the pine nuts, really. You can put this in an ice cube tray and freeze it. And then that way, in the middle of winter, you can take those little ice cubes out and put them in soup or whatever you're making, spaghetti sauce, whatever you think pesto would be good in. Get all the last drop of that good stuff. So now I have some pesto. So now that our spinach mixture is pretty cool, we're going to add the ricotta cheese, an egg, and some Parmesan cheese. So I have the ricotta cheese here. Then I'm going to take my egg and put it in there. And then we're going to add a little bit more of Parmesan cheese. Put it all in. And we have our ricotta mixture with the spinach. So now it's time to make lasagna and put it together. So now we have our lasagna dish. We're going to spray it with a little bit of spray. And then we're going to take our sliced zucchinis and we're going to lay them on the bottom, just like lasagna. I think 3 across might work. And if you need to put any the other direction, there's lots of little pieces when I sliced all this. Okay, so then I'm going to take some of my ricotta mixture, kind of put that on top, kind of just kind of spread it thinly. Then I'm going to take some of our pesto and spoon that on there thinly. So now we've got ricotta and pesto and garlic and onions and all those good things. Another layer. And finish off my ricotta and spinach mixture. So when you're done, you can also add some spaghetti sauce, some mozzarella cheese, and then you're going to cover it and we're going to put it in the oven for about a half an hour. Then we're going to take the aluminum foil off and let it continue to bake for another 20 minutes. So the next time you don't know what to do with your zucchinis, look at this. You can make lasagna, beautiful spinach lasagna. You can make wonderful and very tasty zucchini fritters that you can dip in various things, or wonderful chocolate chip zucchini bread, moist and beautiful and chocolatey. So this is Alexis, just a regular cook, reminding you, don't forget to be fearless. It's only food.